Picture this for a second. You are sitting at 35,000 feet.
Oh, high stakes right from the start.
Right. I mean, the autopilot is engaged. And you look out the window, and the clouds just look like this endless sheet of solid glass.
Totally peaceful.
Exactly. And the 300 people sitting in the cabin behind you, they believe you have absolute, total control.
Right. To them, you're just the steady voice on the intercom.
Yeah, but inside your head, your entire life is literally burning down.
Wow.
So today's deep dive is about the story of Rose Carter. She is a commercial pilot, a single mother, and someone who experienced a betrayal so calculated that I think it would break most people permanently.
Oh, absolutely. It's a brutal story.
It really is. But we aren't just looking at her story as a tragedy today. We're really breaking down her psychological journey because it serves as this incredibly practical, deeply inspiring guide, you know?
Right. It's a blueprint.
Yeah, a blueprint for anyone who has had the rug completely pulled out from under them.
Yeah.
Anyone who needs to know how to rebuild a life they never even asked to destroy.
It really is a fascinating case study in human resilience. Because, the contrast between her professional environment where panic is literally not an option and her internal psychological state, it creates this dynamic that forces us to look really closely at how the human brain processes sudden catastrophic loss.
Yeah.
We are going to map out the anatomy of a betrayal, examine the biological trap of survival mode, and look at the exact mechanics of how you convert profound bitterness into total indifference.
Oh, okay, let's unpack this. Because the baseline for Rose is that she has to be perfectly steady.
Right. Almost.
No sudden movements, no emotional outbursts, right? She is literally paid to manage risk and keep a multi-million-dollar machine in the air.
Exactly.
And applying that same operational detachment to a collapsing personal life just seems impossible. But she had to try.
She had no choice.
Right. And the collapse, it started on a Tuesday. So she had just landed this grueling 12-hour long-haul flight.
Oh, those are exhausting.
Oh, totally. Her body is heavy. Her brain is jumping across 3 different time zones. And she turns her phone off airplane mode. And there it is.
Just waiting for her.
Yeah. 3 missed calls and a text from her husband that just says, "We need to talk."
The worst 4 words in the English language.
I mean, seriously. I don't care if it's your spouse, your boss, your mechanic. Those 4 words instantly ruin your week.
Oh, they ruin everything.
Yeah.
Because the brain does not process those 4 words logically.
What do you mean?
Well, the amygdala, which is essentially the brain's primitive fire alarm, it doesn't do nuance.
Right.
When you read "we need to talk," the amygdala bypasses the logical prefrontal cortex entirely. It immediately dumps adrenaline and cortisol stored into your bloodstream.
So you go into full panic mode.
Exactly. Your body is physically preparing to outrun a predator, but you are just sitting in a pilot seat, staring at a glowing screen.
Wow, so she's already flooded with adrenaline before she even unlocks her front door.
Completely flooded.
And when she finally gets home, the very first thing she notices is the silence.
Always a bad sign.
Right. She walks into the bedroom, and half the drawers are empty. Key pieces of his wardrobe are just gone.
Just packed up and left.
Yeah, but see, here's where it gets really interesting. If this were just a standard breakup, maybe he leaves a note on the counter. But minutes after she walks into this hollow house, her phone starts lighting up with bank notifications.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Withdrawals, heavy transfers, entire joint accounts completely emptied out.
That's terrifying.
Right. This wasn't just a partner leaving. This was a heist. It's like someone secretly packing the only parachute on the plane, strapping it on, and jumping out in the middle of the night.
The word heist is incredibly accurate here.
Yeah.
And I think it explains the cognitive dissonance she experienced in those first few hours.
How so?
Well, if a partner simply leaves, your brain processes the grief of a severed attachment, right? It hurts, but it's a known psychological process.
Yeah, people break up every day.
Exactly. Yeah. But what her husband did was systematically dismantle her financial and structural safety nets. He jeopardized her literal survival and, the survival of their daughter.
Which is just so incredibly cruel.
It is. And when a betrayal is that calculated, it forces the brain into a state of extreme cognitive dissonance. You're trying to hold 2 completely opposing truths at the exact same time.
Like what?
Like, the person you trusted as your primary protector has suddenly revealed themselves to be an active predator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The brain just short-circuits because the foundational schema of how the world works is completely broken.
Man. So how do you even process that when you have to be back in the sky commanding a commercial flight in 48 hours?
The reality is you don't.
Just don't.
You don't. You lock it away.
Yeah, the sources note that she didn't even cry. She just sat on the floor staring at nothing until her daughter, Lily, walked in from school.
Which is such a heavy moment.
It really is.
Yeah.
Rose just forces this smile, looks at her kid, and says, "He left." And that is the exact moment Rose enters the blur.
The survival mode.
Exactly. Lawyers, school runs, keeping the lights on, and flying. She just keeps moving.
Because stopping requires feeling. And what we are seeing here is the deployment of a biological defense mechanism. Survival mode suppresses the emotional processing centers of the brain so that your executive function can handle immediate incoming threats.
It's like triage for your brain.
Precisely. It is a highly effective evolutionary tool if you are trying to survive an acute crisis, like escaping a burning building. But it is fundamentally not designed for long-term living.
Which brings up a terrifying reality for someone whose literal job relies on flawless execution. So what does this all mean for someone whose job is perfection? You can't just power through forever.
No, you really can't.
The burnout eventually catches up. But high-functioning burnout doesn't announce itself with a massive explosion. It leaks.
Exactly. When you are forcing cognitive perfection while actively suppressing massive emotional trauma, you're basically running an engine without oil.
Oof, that's a great analogy.
It doesn't just suddenly stop, right? The internal friction physically tears the metal apart piece by piece until the entire system fuses shut. The pressure inside the system has to escape somewhere.
And in a cockpit, a leak is terrifying. The sources detail these minor, almost invisible mistakes she started making.
Things that normally she'd do in her sleep.
Right. A routine checklist item missed, a slightly delayed response to air traffic control, a split second of hesitation during a landing sequence.
And at those speeds, a split second is everything.
Exactly. None of it resulted in an emergency, but noticing that hesitation in herself must have been absolutely horrifying.
She was becoming a liability. And she knew it. Her internal system was fracturing under the weight of the suppression.
I think we need to pause here for a second, because most people listening to this right now aren't landing 747s while dealing with a calculated financial heist by their spouse.
Right. It's a very specific scenario.
But anyone listening who has tried to maintain a, perfect employee facade while going through a standard breakup or a family crisis, they know this exact crushing pressure.
Oh, yeah. You try to compartmentalize, but the cracks always show up.
Always. And for Rose, the turning point, the moment the engine finally seizes up, it doesn't happen at 35,000 feet. It happens at the dinner table.
This is such a pivotal moment.
It is. She and Lily are picking at their food, and Lily just looks at her mother and says, "You're here, but you're not really here."
Wow.
Yeah. That single sentence guts Rose. It cuts deeper than the emptied bank accounts. But why? Why does a comment from a child break through when the reality of financial ruin couldn't?
Well, what's fascinating here is that children do not intellectualize trauma. They act as perfectly polished mirrors for the human nervous system.
They just reflect what they feel.
Exactly. Lily entirely bypassed Rose's elaborate adult defenses. Rose thought she was successfully protecting her daughter by being strong, by keeping the machinery of their lives running.
Paying the bills, doing the school runs.
Right. But Lily's observation forced Rose to confront the actual cost of her survival mode. She was physically keeping them alive, but she was entirely absent as a mother.
And that observation was the catalyst. It forces Rose to stop running. She finally allows the reality of what happened to land.
And that's when the real pain starts.
Yeah, when that dam breaks, you get the grief, sure. But then comes the really dark stuff, the rage. She starts vividly visualizing revenge.
Completely natural response.
Oh, I'd be furious. She wants to expose his secrets to his new circle, destroy his professional reputation, make him feel as tiny and powerless as he made her feel. And I have to admit, if I'm in her shoes, my instinct is absolutely scorched earth.
You want to burn it all down.
I want to ruin his life. Walking away just feels like, I don't know, letting him win.
It feels like letting him win because anger is a highly energizing emotion. When you feel completely powerless when your agency has been stolen from you, anger floods your system to make you feel powerful again.
It's like fuel.
It is. It gives you a mission. But there is a massive biological and psychological cost to that vengeance.
So she asks herself a really pivotal question. She asks, what would actually hurt him the most? And she realizes that it isn't destruction, it's indifference.
Yeah.
It's becoming wildly successful and simply forgetting he exists. But I still struggle with this, honestly. How is doing nothing more powerful than fighting back?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, revenge requires an enormous expenditure of your own psychological resources.
Yeah.
It requires you to study your enemy, plot against them,
Yeah.
anticipate their moves.
Right. You have to obsess over them.
Exactly.
Right.
Neurologically, it keeps your nervous system locked in a state of active combat. Hatred keeps you tethered to the person who harmed you.
You're still connected.
Yes, if you are obsessing over ruining him, he still owns a massive piece of your cognitive real estate. He is still dictating your actions.
Wow.
Indifference is the severing of that tie. It removes their significance entirely. You aren't doing nothing. You are aggressively reallocating your energy back to yourself.
It's like realizing you're dying of thirst. And instead of looking for water, you're spending all your remaining energy trying to set the desert on fire.
That is the exact mechanism.
Yeah.
You have finite resources. Rebuilding requires all your capital. You cannot afford to spend it on resentment.
But getting to that level of indifference isn't a switch you just flip. It leaves this massive vacuum. When the anger is gone and the obsession is gone, what fills that empty space?
That is the hardest part of the journey.
It is. And to figure that out, Rose has to do the absolute hardest thing imaginable for a commercial pilot. She has to ground herself.
Which means she has to willingly strip away the very thing that was holding her identity together.
Yeah. People love to throw around the cliche that time heals all wounds. But time doesn't do anything right. Time is just the empty space where you have to actually do the work.
You have to actively heal.
Exactly. Rose had to put herself into heavy maintenance. Step one was reclaiming structural control. She hires a new financial advisor, locks down her remaining accounts, and starts rebuilding from actual zero.
Taking back the steering wheel.
Yep. Step two was stability. She fights for full custody of Lily, not out of a desire to punish her ex-husband, but out of absolute certainty that it's what her daughter needs.
Operating from facts, not anger.
Right. And then step three, she has to deal with herself. She takes a formal leave of absence from flying. And I have to ask, how terrifying is it to strip away your job title when it's the only armor you have left?
Oh, it's debilitating. Psychologists refer to this as identity foreclosure.
Identity foreclosure.
Yes. When all of your self-worth and your entire sense of self is tied up in a single role in this case, the perfect, unflappable pilot removing that role leaves a terrifying void.
Because who are you without it?
Exactly. Who are you when you aren't producing, performing, or commanding a room? When she grounded herself, she finally had to face the quiet.
And the quiet was incredibly loud. She starts therapy, and the sources say the first few sessions were just agonizingly silent.
She probably didn't even have the words yet.
Right, she didn't know where to begin. But slowly, the truth starts coming out. She realizes she wasn't just burned out from the betrayal. She was exhausted from having to be strong for entirely too long.
Holding it all together.
Yeah, she had been carrying the weight of a failing marriage and a demanding career long before he ever emptied the accounts.
The betrayal was just the catalyst that forced the collapse of an already unsustainable structure. But what is truly remarkable about her rebuilding phase is how she utilized her vulnerability.
Right, because during this leave of absence, something completely unexpected happens. She feels totally broken, yet young female pilots start reaching out to her.
Looking up to her?
Yes, they see her as a trailblazer, this symbol of strength in a heavily male-dominated industry. They are asking her for advice on navigating their own careers and personal lives.
And here we see the mechanism of healing through mirroring.
How does that work?
Well, she felt entirely unequipped to mentor anyone. She felt like an imposter whose life had just fallen apart, but she chose to show up for those young women anyway.
Despite how she felt.
Right. By offering them guidance, by mirroring strength and resilience for them, she slowly started to internalize those qualities again for herself. Knowledge and strength are often most effectively synthesized when they are applied to helping others.
She didn't wait until she was, totally fixed to start being of service, and that is what ultimately rebuilds her foundation.
It gave her a new kind of purpose.
It did. And months later, she finally returns to the skies. But she's different now. She isn't chasing that impossible standard of robotic, unemotional perfection anymore.
She's human again.
Exactly. There's a specific story from one of her first flights back. They hit heavy, nasty turbulence. The kind that drops the plane suddenly and makes the passengers scream.
The kind that makes you grip the armrests.
Oh, absolutely. Rose gets on the intercom, her voice perfectly level, and says everything is under control. And for the first time in years, she actually believes her own voice.
Because the nature of her control had changed. Before the betrayal, her control was a brittle facade built on suppressing her anxiety.
Just faking it till you make it.
Right. But it was rigid, and rigid things snap under pressure. Now her control was flexible and resilient. It was built on genuine self-trust. She knew she could handle a crisis in the air because she had just survived the ultimate catastrophic crisis on the ground.
She had already lived through the worst-case scenario, which
Exactly.
is exactly the resilience she needed because the past isn't always done with you just because you are done with it.
Oh no, it always comes back around.
Years go by. She has completely rebuilt her career. Her finances are stable. Her relationship with Lily is thriving. And then, out of nowhere, on a random afternoon, the phone lights up.
Oh boy.
A message from him.
I've been thinking about us.
The audacity is just striking.
It is.
But neurologically, it is completely predictable.
Really? Why?
When someone who thrives on power and control senses that you have entirely escaped their gravity, they will often reach out simply to test the tether.
Just to see if you'll respond.
Yes, they want to see if they still have access to your emotional supply. But my question is, why even answer? Why agree to meet him? If she's achieved this total indifference, shouldn't she just block the number and move on?
That is a very common misconception about closure. This raises an important question, right? We are culturally conditioned to believe that closure is an external event, that it requires the other person's participation.
Like, you need them to say sorry.
Exactly. We think if we just hear the right apology or get the real explanation for why they hurt us, the wound will neatly close. But Rose proves closure is something you grant yourself.
So why meet him?
Rose didn't agree to meet him because she needed his explanation. She agreed to meet him to prove to herself that the tether was truly gone. She was testing her own indifference.
And the way this meeting goes down is incredible. They meet for coffee, he walks in, and he hasn't physically shrunk, but to her, his presence is just small.
He has zero gravity.
None. He looks at her life, at everything she's achieved since he tried to ruin her, and he says, I didn't think you would recover like this. And Rose just gives a slight smile and says, neither did I. He starts trying to offer excuses, spinning these justifications for why he drained the accounts and vanished. But she realizes in that exact moment that she isn't there to understand him.
Right, because she realized that closure isn't something he could ever give her. Closure is something she had already granted herself the moment she decided she no longer needed his narrative to make sense of her life.
Okay, let's unpack this. She literally just unassigned him as the main character of her life.
Exactly.
When he finally finishes making his excuses, she looks at him. No screaming, no dramatic speech. She just says, I don't hate you.
And he probably felt relieved.
Oh, you can see him visibly relax, thinking he's been forgiven. But then she drops the hammer. She says, but I don't need you either. She stands up, pays for her own coffee, and walks away. No drama, just absolute freedom.
But I don't need you. That is the weapon of indifference fully deployed.
It really is.
To someone who sought to destroy you, hatred is comforting because it means you still care. It means they still matter. Indifference means they have ceased to exist in your universe. It is the most anticlimactic, yet infinitely powerful ending possible.
It's so powerful, and it brings us to the core takeaway for you listening right now. The greatest comebacks in life usually aren't loud. They aren't explosive, and they aren't vengeful. They are quiet.
Very quiet.
They are steady. They involve waking up and choosing yourself over and over again, repairing the engine instead of just running it dry until you have absolutely nothing left to prove to the person who tried to break you.
That's the real victory.
So think about your own life right now. Where might you be burning your highly valuable energy on resenting someone else's actions instead of using that exact same energy to rebuild your own runway?
And I want to leave you with a final, slightly different perspective to consider today. We have spent this entire deep dive looking at her husband's betrayal as the absolute worst thing that could have happened to Rose. It was a heist, it was a profound violation, and it was cruel. But it makes you wonder, what if that betrayal was actually the only thing capable of forcing her to drop a completely exhausting, unsustainable facade of perfection?
Oh, wow.
Is it possible that the greatest betrayals we face in life, the rug pulls, the shattered safety nets, are actually just brutal, disguised invitations to finally meet our authentic selves?
That is heavy. So next time you find yourself at 35,000 feet looking out at those peaceful clouds, ask yourself what kind of chaos you're holding on to inside the cockpit. And remember, you always have the power to just walk away.